All right. Look at you drinking.
Gotta stay hydrated. It's
Hydrate or
hot.
nitrate?
Exactly. Hydrated.
What Matt said.
It's a simple fact of life.
Although to be fair, Matt, you hydrate off of soda.
Excuse me.
That's not hydration.
Do you see what I have in my hand right here? It is water.
For the moment, you forget I live not very far from where you do.
I drink plenty of water.
But to be fair, yeah, he does drink plenty of water, especially when it's stream time.
All right. So, did either one of you listen to that music?
I did not.
I'm gonna be honest with you. You know what, Greg? I'll make you a promise. I'll go back and listen to it afterwards and give you my opinion.
All right. All right.
He's putting on some weird stuff, wasn't he?
I don't know. It's up to. I think the chat's gonna have to tell us on that one because I don't know.
It was fantastic.
He had us a little worried in stream prep. We were kind of unsure of what to think of what he was going to play. So, but Greg's music choices aside, welcome to episode 55 of the Update Log, and I'm Rob, your host, and with me are my two co-hosts, Greg and Matt. And today, let's see, today.
It's Wednesday.
It's Wednesday. It is Wednesday. Jesus, where did the other 2 days go from this week? Anyway, the gaming industry has been interesting last couple of weeks. There's been a couple of interesting topics that have kind of come up. One of them has been the topic of discussion about tipping developers for the games that they've made. And that comment, actually, I'll post the tweet about it, was made by Blizzard's former CEO, Mike Ibarra, where he espouses some, well-known games like God of War, Redemption 2, Baldur's Gate 3, etc., etc. These really popular in AAA games, $60, $70 games, and basically says in his tweet how he would like to have a choice to give him more money, like after the fact, which interesting, very interesting.
Shut up and take my money.
Kind of point to take, considering there are actually ways to tip already present. We'll go over that in a couple minutes, but I want to get y'all's feedback on this. We'll start with you, Greg.
Oh wow. Okay. That's what I thought of that. All right, you gotta learn how to stay in your seat. So yeah, starting with me on the tipping subject. I mean, what does that really mean? Okay, so we're gonna pay $70 or more dollars for a game.
More dollars.
And then just give them more money. Right.
Essentially,
it's like a microtransaction, but you don't get anything in return.
Well, and that's exactly my point right there. Who gets the money? Okay, so the grand idea is that we're tipping the developers for their effort in what they put into these games and all those things.
Yes.
Okay, that's fantastic. But I honestly, that's like, I'm not saying that's a bad idea, because I don't want to devalue the people that are doing the work and developing these games, because they obviously are at least I would say most of them are giving their best effort to produce something that we all like and enjoy. But that sounds like just a cheap cop out on the from a company standpoint, an executive of a company saying, oh yeah, we're gonna allow you. It's like waiters and waitresses in restaurants. We're going we're going to, because you make tips, we're going to pay you less. I mean, I get it in one hand, because then you're getting in the service industry, you're getting paid for, how well you treat your customers. And I mean, some waiters and waitresses actually make quite a bit more than what they would make as an hourly rate, because they're very good at their job. They're very, people like them. But these devs don't have a direct conduit to the customer necessarily. So this whole idea of tipping is, I don't think it's a good idea. I think the only, couple of possible outcomes of this, I mean, yeah, okay, if you feel that, you should have paid $90 for that $70 game, then, and you want to give an extra $20 to somebody, you would probably want to give it directly to the developers, the people behind the scenes working on the game. Because if you're giving it to the company, I mean, where does that go? It's kind of like these, these companies that do this, donate your change stuff. You donate, you put your change in the little jar, okay, or whatever you're donating, and then they claim that. I mean, that goes into their bank account, and then they claim that as a contribution on their behalf.
Oh yeah, it's offloading their because they get tax cuts on that.
Right.
They source that from customers instead of actually doing it themselves.
Exactly. And then they get to put their name on things and claim that they're the good guy. Or look at your local Walmart built your new park, or you put up your new picnic benches. No, all your change you donated at the register is what did that. They didn't do anything other than take your money.
You did that. Yeah. They just used you to pay for it and then slapped their name on it.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't personally, when I hear corporate executives talk about tipping and things like that, that just doesn't set well with me. I mean, if you really, if they deserve more money, then pay them better. I mean, why are you out here telling us that we should tip them? Why don't you just pay them what they're worth instead of telling us that we should pay more?
That's putting it on the consumer instead of you as the business paying your employees.
Right.
Better.
If you really think that they're worth more than what you're already paying them, then I'm not the bad guy because I didn't tip them. You're the
bad guy because you ain't paying them enough.
What the hell,
and it's for those who know what's like in the industry. Game devs actually don't make a whole lot of money compared to
I need your money.
Computer science fields. You don't
Yeah.
become a game dev websites, or there are plenty of other things to use like coding skills and all that for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like you can freelance and consult and stuff. You'll probably make way more money.
Well,
Yeah. So like in a perfect world, I wouldn't be opposed to the idea of like the enabling some sort of tipping function. But unfortunately, this isn't a perfect world we live in. I don't see this being handled right by the AAA game corporations. At the very least, they take 30 to maybe even 50% of those tips for themselves. Worst case scenario, they use it as an excuse to cut wages and pretty much put game devs on the same level as like waiters and waitresses, where they make there are waiters and waitresses that make less than minimum wage because that's subsidized by tips. Like they're pretty much gonna outsource the payment for their devs to the customer instead. And I'm not saying that's what would happen, but I also don't trust that they don't consider that.
Yeah.
So,
And then
depending on where you're looking, okay. Here's the thing. Just some figures on this, okay. So the average game developer salary in the United States, ranges. Well, the range is between 64 and 91,000 a year. There's another site that says the average game developer's salary across the board is 116,000 a year. So it's not like these people are not making good money for what they're doing. They are. It's a good field to be in that sense. But just like anything else, I mean, when you get into that range as a job where you're making 100,000 plus, I mean, job security is not necessarily
Guaranteed.
a given anymore. Well, and it's not a given anyway. But I mean, it's a lot less given because you're project to project a lot of times, and that's so. I just can't. I just don't think that comment was made with any type of. It holds no value to me. There's nothing emotional about it. It's not in earnest. It's just garbage, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a little tone deaf, honestly.
Right.
And the irony of that statement is that it's coming from a CEO who, I mean, I don't know what Mike Ibarra made before he left Blizzard. I didn't bother looking it up, but I'm pretty sure it was in the tens of millions of dollars, at the very least. Because that's what they make. I mean, typically CEOs of multiple companies, not just the gaming industry, this is across the board, they make pretty hefty salaries, depending on. Especially if it's in tech.
I'm not going to completely argue against what you're saying there, because mostly what we see are just, the ones that get publicized are the ones that are getting paid ridiculous amounts of money.
Yeah.
But C-suite executives, including your CEOs, are not typically paid millions of dollars. That's a misconception.
It's industry dependent, I will say that, because I know the tech industry, they get paid fairly well. The game industry, game
industry
again,
overpays. Depending on the company.
Yeah, it's industry specific, I feel like, and it's dependent upon the company within that industry. If it's a big name like Blizzard, Activision, if it's a big name studio, like a movie studio, stuff like that, those are built in. But again, I will agree with you, Greg. It's not like across the board. But comparatively, he definitely gets paid way more than everybody else, and to a degree, he should be. He is a CEO. He takes on more of the responsibility and risk of that company. So I'm not trying to knock guys at the top who are doing their job, who take on that responsibility and risk, because if everything goes sideways, they're looking at him. You know what I mean? So I get that.
CEOs, people at the top of companies, should make good money for what they do, but it's a question of how much pay are they really deserving? Take a look at Bobby Kotick. The man was notorious for being pretty much the most overpaid CEO in all of America, essentially.
Honestly, I don't.
Absurd amounts of money every year,
worth every penny.
Yeah, it's absurd. Microsoft closing down a bunch of studios while paying this man.
That guy's kids need new shoes. I mean, he needs.
Yeah,
he's
not just a golden parachute. Man got a fucking diamond parachute, platinum, whatever. That money, they could have given him half that money and still been able to keep several of those studios, especially Tango, afloat. It's utterly ridiculous. And when it comes from the same company, another CEO, I think he was technically president. I don't know, they kind of changed the terms around for a while over at Blizzard.
Yeah.
When it comes from another leader of that company, which has not the best reputation, it really makes me doubt the intentions of what he says. Because again, in a perfect world, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing that tipping option and be like, well, especially if it's in a game that doesn't have microtransactions or anything like that in it.
Here's the thing, though.
If I enjoyed the game so much, I'd be like, okay, maybe $5-10, whatever. But I just don't trust AAA gaming sphere to do it the way that we want it to go. Because honestly, we would want that to go to the devs. We don't want that being touched by we don't want any of that going into the corporate wallets, right? But I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't either. And I'm just about to touch on a couple of things. So you bring up a very good point with regards to that, Matt, in that microtransactions and cash shops and like in-game storefronts have more or less become the norm, even with single player games. Not as much, but we're starting to see it in single player titles. They're more prevalent and kind of more commonplace in live service games, on always online
Multiplayer,
multiplayers. Yeah.
that type of stuff.
So, but we are starting to see it in single player games, and I'm gonna call it now. I don't think they're going anywhere. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going anywhere. And here's the thing: I'm not entirely against them when they're done properly.
Well, here's a question for you then. Like, because you say doing it properly.
Yeah.
How do you properly do microtransactions in a single player game? Because in a lot of multiplayer games, microtransactions is probably one of the primary functions that they serve as cosmetic. And the purpose of that in a multiplayer game is to be able to show off to other people, like, hey,
I got some exclusive.
Look at this new outfit I've got. It's part of this social part of the game. Yeah. Your ability to express yourself to other people with, the outfit or character or stuff like that. But that doesn't exactly exist in a single player game.
Yeah.
Like, there's no one else to really express yourself to in that same way. So I couldn't say that cosmetic microtransactions are really something that should be in a single player game. So like
that is a fair point, but and again, it's not common, but I have seen a couple of posts who and I can't remember the game off the top of my head. I'll have to post it in our Discord later. By the way, if you're not part of our Discord, go ahead and join. We do have an info links section in the update log category where I'm posting some of the stuff and tweets and things like that, where you guys can go kind of read it and dive into the comment section. They're interesting. I've read through some of them. They're let me put it this way: the Mike Ibarra comment on Twitter got some very pointed comments. They were respectful, at least for most of the ones that I saw, but they were very pointed. Basically, the answer is no. No, we should not.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like the person it's coming from makes you really just doubt the intentions.
Yeah. But to answer your question, Matt, and please, guys, if you have questions of your own, do post them in the chat. And this is a question to actually all of you watching. What are your thoughts on this whole situation? This particular piece of tipping. And I'm going to circle back to something I said earlier, where there are actually quote unquote tipping options already available in game purchases nowadays. But going back, let me answer your question first. In a single player game, a cash shop of any sort, I think, could be implemented to a less degree. I'm not saying I would want to see one, but I can see it. And again, there are a handful of games where they've been implemented, and primarily for what you said, cosmetic options. Having these kind of exclusive pieces as both a way to kind of change up your look and support the developers. I I mean, again, you bring up a very good point that a lot of the cosmetic options within these cash shops and online stores for multiplayer are there for the social aspect of that, of showing off, an exclusive skin or cosmetic or effect or what have you. I guess I'm just trying to see kind of where they're going to take, because again, I don't see cash shops and stuff like that going anywhere anytime soon.
I mean, they're definitely not, but
it's just
I don't
unfortunate.
I don't think single player games should have those types of things. There's no point. Like, from a player perspective, there's no point in any of those existing.
Yeah, they really don't.
I don't think multiplayer games should have those options. I don't think that the whole idea behind microtransactions, especially for any type of game improvement option, is it's honestly it's fleecing the players is what's happening. You're
not
fleecing the community.
You're not wrong. It's a common thing where, like,
right. I just want to put some numbers out there. I'll put a little bit of text behind this, because you look at these online games. I mean, what do you think the average that you're paying a month to play this game is? What do you think the average is? I'm just looking for somebody to throw a number. I'm going to say $9. $9. Okay.
$9.
So, I mean, $9 seems fair if you really like the game and whatnot. So you're paying $9 a month to play this game. And there's 1 million players on that game. Suddenly you have a game that's generating $9 million a month. The original development piece that went into it's over. Now they're just doing upkeep and adding gameplay features, things like that. And even if you have 200 developers working on it, 200 developers are not making, between the 200 developers, they're not making anywhere near $9 million a month.
No, absolutely not.
So,
like, they're probably making, I'd give a rough estimate based on average salaries and positions. Obviously, you'll have your leads and your senior developers and your creative director of that particular project. They're probably making at most half of that $9 million.
I think these companies are used to being able to cry wolf and get out of whatever they're into. It's ridiculous. I don't agree with it at all. I'm going to take it outside of the gaming industry, and I'm going to say, like, the oil industry. A few years ago, ExxonMobil, for one, whined and complained all year long about, oh, geez, it's so hard, and we're can't make any money, and then their earnings for the year were $8 billion in profit. Okay. you can't make any money. Damn. Only $8 billion. That's all. Jeez.
They only made billions, guys.
They only made $8 billion in profit. Those are the key words there. When you said that, Greg, I'm like, in profit. That means everything is paid for. That means the business is good. Mm-hmm. Everybody's paid for. They're in the black, and they got $8 billion.
That's the thing that, like, at any time, like, a very large corporation, does what you said, Greg, like, cries wolf, or be like, it's so expensive these days to do what we do. It's like, all right, let me see those quarterly reports. Oh, record profits, you say? That's interesting.
I would let all the advertising and the conversations that go on ahead of time. You tend to mention the GTA thing, $2 billion, or I would like to see a breakdown of where that money goes. I don't believe it. I think it's all bullshit. I will tell you how much of it just goes into the pockets of whatever. Somebody.
I'm going to sit here and I'm going to call it, and we're actually going to get into this as the episode continues, because we have a couple other topics that we want to dive into that are kind of wrapping around the title. If you haven't noticed, is gaming in big trouble? And from what I've researched, yes, especially at the AAA industry, the indie and AA scene, or I guess the kind of the mid-sized developers, AA, they're fine. They're doing great. It's the AAA that are having big trouble. And to answer your question, Greg, I'm honestly, and not just with the GTA 6, Matt. That's the new one coming out, right?
Yeah, because the current one now is GTA 5.
GTA 5. Okay. I mean, I stopped paying attention to GTA a long time ago, but
Not my type of game.
yeah, it's really not. GTA 6 with a proposed $2 billion production budget. I'm willing to bet a sizable chunk of that. I'm not gonna say half, but a sizable chunk of that is going to fucking advertising, and that is part of the problem with the AAA industry. And this is getting kind of a little bit ahead, but I want to touch on this because you brought it up, Greg. But do any of you guys remember seeing any advertisement for video games when we'll say 10, 20 years ago? Like legitimately seeing an advertisement for a video game.
10 years ago, 10 years ago, yeah, definitely, though not as prevalent. 20 years ago, let's see, I was 10. I was 10 at that point, so
you probably weren't.
I know advertising definitely existed. I just didn't pay attention, so I probably just didn't see it. I'm sure if you're like someone in the sphere, you probably see those advertisements, but it's not like it's not like it is. It's now. Different. It's different today because they have like online things like Twitch and YouTube, where a lot of gamers are and stuff like that. So that's where a lot of that advertising is targeted. Mostly on the internet ads.
Yeah,
I think the vast majority of it, and I think the vast majority of it years ago was media and print, not like what you see now, where you've got video game ads, the next new right, and it's in your face and it's everywhere. And on TV and on all the
it's on streaming,
all the advertising, sites, right? All the advertising that goes on streaming sites and the video piece and email marketing and all those different things. I think vast majority of it in the past was like magazines, comic books, stuff like that, because
forums, word of mouth.
Well, forums, but I mean, how far back are you going? Because I mean, forums have been a thing for a long time, but not like they are now.
Yeah, I'd say more so 10 to 15 years ago. I feel like you're right in that, and I'm gonna get to the point of why I brought this up in a second. But I agree, like PC Gamer, that magazine and stuff like that, like the GameStop magazines that they had when you would go, if any of you guys remember going to GameStop to buy your games, because I do, and I would always pick up the PC Gamer, or I think the other one was PC Informer or whatever, and flip through it and see what was coming out. And the reason why I brought up the advertising piece, Nintendo Power, yep, that's the reason why I brought up the
advertising.
And yes, Infinity Core, welcome in, buddy. I'm inclined to agree with you on that one. Most of it probably does go into CEO pockets, and probably not just their pockets. I'm pretty sure most of the C-suites gets a little some, but probably mostly their pockets. But the reason why I bring up advertising is because and we've talked about it before on other episodes, but. And Matt, I remember you mentioning it, but like the advertising for a lot of these AAA games it's wild, the amount of money that they spend on just advertising the game.
Yeah, like I think
it's crazy amounts of money.
I'll need to look it up to reconfirm, but I think for a lot of games in the AAA sphere, essentially half the budget for the entire project is essentially advertising. Yeah, I need to look this up again just to confirm, but I think that is like common.
Yeah,
in the AAA sphere.
I'm willing to bet you're pretty accurate on that assumption. That assumption, Matt, because that's kind of what I've been hearing and seeing, and it doesn't make sense to me that you're going to spend that much on advertising. And again, I am not I'm not a marketer. I'm not an advertiser. I don't. Maybe there's things that I'm not seeing, but with the prevalence of the internet and street, like everything we just talked about, like
Advertising's expensive, man. I will put it that way. It is very expensive.
yeah, I was actually about to ask you, was like, is it really that freaking expensive? Because that's wild. That is absolutely wild that you got to pay half of your production value to advertising. With how open and open-ended the internet is, like, what? Huh? It blows my fucking mind.
But here's the thing: that all the advertising, I mean, the only reason you do it is to increase sales of the game. So saying that, okay, their advertising budget or their advertising is eating up all of their, I mean, so essentially what they're saying is if they didn't spend out of a $2 billion budget, if they didn't spend $1 billion on advertising, they wouldn't make any money on the game.
Yeah, that's my point, Greg. It's like I'm sorry, you can't sit there in good conscience and be like, we got to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on advertising. We ain't make no money.
Yeah,
no, I mean, you're gonna make no money if you spend all that money on advertising, and your game's a pile of shit. That's why you're gonna make no money.
Yeah, I mean, this ratio, it really does change a lot between game to game, company to company. But yeah, like when the natural budget is already so high, they're going to want to try to ensure it sells, so they're going to spend that much more on the advertisement. So that drives up the overall budget even more. You can't. It's kind of like you can't raise one up without raising the other. Because the more you pump into the project, it's like, well, we got to make sure it succeeds, so we pump in more money over here for advertising.
But
unless you're Bethesda shadow dropping Hi-Fi Rush, at that point you spend $0 on
and still make money.
Because it was just a genuinely good game, and like YouTubers and Twitch streamers picked it up and showed it to everyone.
Yeah,
they got essentially free advertisement there.
And that's another thing. And again, I don't want to get too far into the advertising weeds, but that's another thing that just blows my mind that these studios aren't taking advantage of, is the free fucking advertising that Twitch streamers and YouTubers literally give you. And here's the thing: most of them aren't going to ask you for a lot. Maybe a free copy of the game. That's it. Maybe a couple keys to give out to their audience. That's really it. You're not spending hundreds of millions of dollars to get these YouTubers to literally play your game for free and to showcase it to the people that watch their stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why sponsored streams are such a prevalent thing these days.
Yeah.
Sponsored streams on Twitch or sponsored videos on YouTube, because honestly, it's a lot cheaper comparatively for the amount of audience that it'll be brought to. Like, doing it that way compared to like putting your ads on like major platforms like TV or like the YouTube or Twitch, like advertisements that you see, rather than like the sponsoring the content creator themselves.
Yep. And here's the thing, and I'm gonna, maybe this is a hot take, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Your marketing people are overpaid. Marketing people are overpaid. You want to know why? Because the places they're telling you to put your ads on, the streaming sites and the like YouTube like ads and stuff like that. You want to know what most people use? Because they hate ads. These ad blockers. They don't even see your freaking shit. They don't even see your stuff. I'm willing to bet maybe less than half, but close to half of the people that are on the internet probably use some form of ad blocker just because they fucking hate ads.
I don't know about that percentage you just put there, but
I know I'm probably overestimating, but I know a lot of people who use ad blocker just because we're tired of seeing ads every 5 fucking minutes. We're tired of seeing them.
I see one thing that's saying as of Q3 2021, 37% of internet users worldwide use ad blockers. I don't know how verifiable that number is, but
That's.
I mean, a lot of people
honestly,
do
that's
use
kind of
ad.
higher than I. That's a sizable chunk.
Yeah, again, I don't know if that's verifiable.
Like how, yeah.
What one that's saying, because that's just like quick Google search, so you know,
Yeah.
take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, ad block is
Sizable and I guess, and again, this I know I sound like I'm ranting, but maybe I am a little bit. But the reason why I'm kind of bringing this up, it's kind of, again, core to the episode itself, is the budgets for these games, for these AAA games, are getting out of hand.
How you guys both bought Baldur's Gate 3? How much did you pay for it?
I paid.
I know it's a $60 game, but I got early access. Was it $60 back then, or was it $40?
I think it was $40. Pretty sure it was $40.
I think you're right. Okay. I feel like it was $40.
Yeah. Because I bought it at early access too. I remember. Because we all started playing it together.
Did you realize that the early access of Baldur's Gate 3 generated over $100 million in sales? That's just the early access at $40.
I'm not surprised.
And it has cleared 10 million copies sold.
Yeah, because it was a good game. And here's the thing, and that I'm actually glad you brought them up, because and it could be me. I didn't see a lot of advertising for Baldur's Gate 3 until it got close to launch. There's a couple of reasons why I think it got as many as it did early access. Number one, it was Larian Studios. Number two, it was on Steam. Steam storefront, again, we discussed it in like a very recent previous episode, where if you're going to make a video game, whether it doesn't matter if it's going to be on PC or it's going to be on console, if it's coming to PC and it's not on Steam, you're wrong. You're just wrong, because Steam is the storefront for video games on PC, period. You can kind of argue that all you want. It is what it is. They're the go-to. And Harper says I think it was $40 for early access. Yeah, it probably was $40. But the reason why they actually, for me, one of the reasons why they actually sold as much as they did, as well as they did, because number one, they made a really fucking good game, and number two, their advertising department, their PR department, and the studio as a whole were in almost damn near constant communication with their community. That's what helped sell their game. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember watching, they had a certain title for it, but they would it was on their YouTube channel, and a bunch of creators covered it too. One of the guys I remember, I think his name is Wolfheart or something like that. He covered it, and it would basically almost like what Final Fantasy does, where they do a live letter to the audience, talking about, you know, future updates and, you know, community feedback and what they have planned with the next update, and what they want to come out and what they're trying to fix, and, you know, stuff like that. And that in and of itself is marketing, not your atypical, you know, trailer. And don't get me wrong, those are great. That's why with E3, that closing down, that broke my heart, because I remember back in the day, you know, we were talking about, not, you know, a couple minutes ago, 10, 15 years ago, the you know, commercials, the E3 and all that, and those kind of conferences, those were the commercials for video games. That's what we saw, all the upcoming games for the next year. We saw all the trailers and shit like that coming out. At least that's what I remember. I remember watching that.
Yeah, unfortunately, when it comes to E3 was kind of just a victim of the times, where a lot of companies realize how effective, like, just putting their shit out on YouTube and other platforms was. Like, Nintendo Direct was ridiculously successful, and I'm sure a hell of a lot cheaper than however much they had to pay to put their trailers and all that stuff on E3. So, and like others saw how well that was going for Nintendo, they're like, I think we're going to start doing that. And so E3 just kind of like started losing folks who
Yep.
otherwise would have been there. So it's just an unfortunate, but that's like, the changing of the times.
Yeah, and here's a couple of numbers for you guys after you're done, Matt. Because I'm looking at my notes here and I got some numbers for y'all.
Yeah, I guess the more important part about E3 closing down is that that's likely what led to the Game Awards being as it was. Just
yeah, let's not talk about that.
90% trailers and announcements and actually awards.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. So some numbers for you guys, and again, this is going to highlight some of the points that we've made so far. We're gonna continue making throughout this episode. So most AAA games range from about 50 million to 100 million in production value, meaning it takes between 50 million and 100 million to make a video game. And that's on the low end. That 50 million range. 100 million is getting close to the average, but most of your high profile games that we've seen are breaking the $200, $300, $400 million to make. I mean, I think the largest one so far, the two largest are Honkai Star Rail, if I'm pronouncing that properly, the first part, which is I think reached somewhere around 700 million. But that, and there's an asterisk next to that because that also includes post-release updates and maintenance and stuff. So at release, we'll say a conservative half of that $700 million was used to create the game. But there's another game called Star Citizen, which is still in production, still in, I would you say this is still an alpha?
I don't keep up with the game too much. I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like beta, because I feel like if it is alpha, like the game would be. Actually, no, I'm not going to say anything because I really don't keep up with the game that much. Just say it's early access.
It's still being made. It's early access
for a long time. It's
11 going on 12, if not longer years. So over a decade. But that has a $600 million budget so far. It's an ever evolving budget because it's still being produced. But the point I'm trying to make is most games take a lot of money to make. Most of the AAA games that we've seen over the last 5 years take hundreds of millions of dollars to make. And now I'm going to give you some extra numbers to contrast that. And it's going to illustrate a point. Going back to the mid-90s and early 2000s, you had iconic games like Final Fantasy VII, Halo 2, coming in at less than $40 million to produce. Now take 50 to 100 million, averaging around 200 million in games that defined a genre. Final Fantasy VII, Halo, the Halo games. WoW came in at $65 million. That defined a whole genre for the last 20 years plus. $65 million to make. And as you know, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you go back through our catalog and watch the video, the special guest episode we did with Twain Martin, who was an OG developer on the WoW team that created Vanilla WoW. And he said it. He's like, games are just way too expensive to make these days. Part and parcel because the teams are too big. You have 200 and 300 and 400 member teams putting together these games. Why?
Well, one of the big things.
And here's the thing: do you realistically, honestly need all of those people to make that video game? And you could very well. Again, I'm not sitting at the table with any of these games. You could very well need that many people. Hmm. But I honestly, genuinely, and this is not trying to throw shade at fellow developers, do you really need that many people for that one game? And the reason why I say no is because it leads into another problem that I'll get into. But Matt, you had something you want to say?
Yeah. So there are several problems why having such a massive project, like the problems that it creates just by that nature. Like one, having that many people, it's a lot more like cooks in the kitchen where it's harder to keep like a single concise vision when there's so many people working on it. lot more like stages of communication where things, it's like a game of telephone where communications may not like make it all the way to the other side as intended. And when the game has such a massive budget, that's when they try to play things as safe as possible, because they want to make sure they don't want to take risks, because who wants to take a risk when you pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into something.
Right.
And so the gameplay and story and all that stuff ends up as kind of lackluster, nothing interesting going on. And so it creates a problem that ends up making it less likely to succeed. Like, look at Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. That game did not do well. It had a huge budget, but it was just uninteresting.
Yeah, it was the same as kind of everything else in terms of story.
Yeah,
maybe not in terms of story.
It's a looter shooter live service, which a looter shooter is a very strange type of game to put for something in the superhero genre, where
that is odd. Yeah,
characters are supposed to have extremely different like abilities, powers, and all these things, and then it's just like, well, just give them a bunch of guns. It's like, yeah, I get it's the Suicide Squad. They use a lot of guns, but like, not everyone.
Yeah,
I know. It's a very strange choice, and that's because it's like, well, we're pumping out so much into the game, we can't take these risks. Let's do what we know works. And unfortunately, when you're sticking to the formula that closely, and that's not going to interest too many people, honestly.
Well, it becomes similar to everything else that either A, you've put out, or B, other people have put out, and that's what's happening. You're having these studios that have tons of talent. Like, don't get it twisted. I know we rag on AAA studios quite a bit, but for good reason in most cases. Some of it is just us venting, but don't get it twisted. These studios have absolutely phenomenal talent at their fingertips.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But again, they're kind of fighting the good fight, so to speak, with their hands tied behind the back, because they can't draw outside the box because it might not land well with the audience. So they got to play it safe. They got to make the thing that they know sells, quote unquote, because typically, as we've seen, either it doesn't sell or it's a very short term piece.
Yeah,
that doesn't like you just break even.
Yeah, and
Greg,
that's why
you're
I think
unusually silent over there.
I'm just listening, man.
Yeah, I think that's part of why in like recent times, a lot of the biggest, most popular games that we've seen have been coming from like AA and below, like Baldur's Gate 3. While Baldur's Gate 3 had a pretty high budget, I think it was around 100 million. I wouldn't call Larian Studio a AAA studio on the same level of like the giants that you see. Like maybe that's changing as they all the money they got from Baldur's Gate 3, surely. Maybe they're probably rising up in those ranks. But you have Arrowhead Game Studios with Helldivers 2. You had just some random indie developers from Japan making Palworld. Like a lot of the biggest, most attention-catching things these past several years, as of late, has not been from the AAA sphere. It's been from smaller guys.
Yeah, which are taking the risks.
I don't feel one bit bad for a AAA studio that spends 700 million or whatever, 100 million on a game and it doesn't make the money. I don't feel bad for them at all. I really don't.
I feel bad for the devs who are just doing their job and end up getting labeled. I feel bad for them.
I do.
I don't feel bad for the CEOs in the suits, who made the decisions to make this game as safe as possible. I don't feel bad for them, but at the end of the day, they're not exactly the ones paying for that mistake.
Maybe I'm a little harsher in that, because I don't feel bad for any of them, to be honest with you. I mean, you agreed to take the job and you went and did the work, and you could probably, even as a dev, look at the situation and say, you know what? This is fucked up. It's not going to succeed. But you did the job. You took the paycheck. Now I feel bad for you.
Well, and here's the thing. I'm inclined to agree with you, Greg. My sympathies do go out to the devs who have been laid off, and there have been, I mean, thousands of them. Like we're only halfway through the year, and I'm pretty sure the number of layoffs has reached 10,000, which is about as much, if not more, as the last quarter of last year. So, like, it's ridiculous. But I'm inclined to agree with you, Greg, only in the fact that while yes, the higher ups typically will at the end of the day call the shots, but as a creative director of a team, you know, and here's another piece of news for you. Most of these studios, this is another fault at the AAA level. Most of these studios, the reason why they put all that money and all that effort into that one game is because all they got is one fucking game. They put all their eggs in that one basket. And as someone who isn't, you know, who knows business well, Greg, and who invests, does that sound like a smart fucking move to you? Put all your hopes and dreams into one thing. And here's the thing. And I know we've all talked about this behind the scenes, but not only do they put their hopes and dreams in that one game or two games, but they then want that one or two games to be an evergreen model, meaning they're going to continuously make money off of that for the next, 5-10 years.
Mm.
So they're laying it all on those games. Does that sound like a smart fucking move to anybody?
It depends on the business you're in. That's one thing to it, but I mean, no, it doesn't, not at all. But it does depend. It does depend a lot on the business that you're in, and I mean, because entertainment kind of works that way, and it doesn't mean that you couldn't have multiple projects going on. But with multiple projects, I mean, you've got to. It is, and I mean, we have unique insight on this because this is kind of where we're at. When you're running multiple projects, you can't really do more than two, or as an individual or a small team, you really can't do more than 2 or 3 things at one time. As a matter of fact, once you go beyond 2 things, then all 3 things are going to suffer.
I agree. I agree with you.
Now, does that mean that you should
have a small counterpoint?
Does that mean that you should put all your all those eggs, chickens, whatever? My chickens came before my eggs did, I guess. Does it mean you should put them all in that same basket? That's especially if you don't know how it's going to work out, and if your whole team is in that same boat and saying, "Yep, this is going to be the greatest thing ever," and we're all in. And then it flops, then something went wrong along the way, and you just didn't catch on to it. I don't recommend doing that, putting all your eggs in one basket, and for one thing, because you're going to dump money into that for a longer period of time with nothing coming out. You should always,
and that's what's happening.
Well, and that's where you should always hedge against that. It's do smaller projects at the same time. Don't dump everything into one project, and then just hope that at the end of it, it's going to be I'm going to create the greatest thing ever, and everybody's going to love it. Maybe I hope you're right. I really do. I hope you're right. But
so that kind of goes into a couple counterpoints that I have to that, and I'll for the most part I agree with you, but. You said it right there. Like the entertainment business, as you said, is kind of geared towards that because, again, if you're working on more than one project, it gets a little difficult. However, therein lies also the problem is that it's a creative endeavor. I've noticed, and not only me, but a bunch of other content creators and people who love games, they've noticed that a lot of the gaming studios have tried to make and not tried to, they've done, but they've made it formulaic. That's why we're getting the same pile of crap with every release. We're getting the same formulaic, similar shit every goddamn time. Instead of the creative, in the creative, entertainment genre, We're not getting the creative anymore out of these studios. We're getting the things that they think are going to sell, and the market is kicking them in the teeth for it and showing them like, guys, this ain't working. This ain't working for us.
Well, and that happens in industry, not just in the entertainment industry,
Yeah.
which I could see it being something that would be very prevalent in the entertainment industry. But it happens in every industry. You take a look at, it's when you build that formula, you build a business model, is what you do. And then you hit on something that works. And here's the thing. If you stop innovating at that point and say, okay, we hit on something that works, and now we're just going to turn this into an assembly line and crank out a bunch of shit because we know this formula works. After a while, that formula doesn't work anymore. That's just how this works. So look at, if you want some industry references, BlackBerry.
Yeah.
Perfect reference. Because they had a formula that worked. At one point in time, they controlled over 80% of the marketplace for cellular phones. Now they're gone. They don't exist anymore. But they never...
They didn't innovate.
Exactly.
See, the thing is, like, that saying, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. In a way, it kind of isn't true. Like, maybe there's some areas where that may apply, but definitely not in an industry that demands innovation.
Well, here's the thing,
if it's not broke now, it will be.
Probably, yeah. I mean, that's a good way to put it. But if it's not broke, don't fix it does not apply in a creative endeavor of any kind, in my opinion.
Because people get tired of doing the same thing over and over.
It doesn't apply at all ever anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't apply at all anywhere ever.
Oh yeah.
Could you
eat the same meal every night for the rest of your life? No, you want to change shit up. You gotta get different things.
When you fall into that hole of and I mean there's a lot of context that goes into this, but you fall into the hole if it's not broke, don't fix it, means don't improve it either. And and that's the thing is if you're not working on making your product better or making a new product, then, I mean, once upon a time, there was a company out there that made the best damn buggy whips ever made. Where are they at today?
I don't even know what company you're talking about, but...
I don't either, but I'm sure there was one.
Probably. But we don't know who they are. But, I mean, yeah, that's essentially kind of one of the points I'm trying to make is if it's not broke, don't fix it, doesn't apply. That doesn't mean that you can't, like you said, you hit on something that works. That doesn't mean, just throw that out, the baby with the bathwater, throw that project out and start from scratch. No, you take what worked and you make that better. You innovate on it, like you said, you innovate on it. You take it like, okay, well, how can we make this better? How can we change it up? How can we do something that has the core values and the core systems that have worked for us, but the end result is a bit different, a bit better, a bit more interesting. And I think a lot of these AAA studios have stopped at that point where they're like, oh, well, this worked. Let's do that again. And it shows.
Yeah, because they stop taking risks, they stop innovating, and people get tired of stuff.
Well, the sad part is, and again, taken in context, I understand why they do not take the risks, because obviously investors are, the fiduciary responsibility of the business is to get those investors back their money and, whatever else is in that contract. Whatever
make them a profit.
Yeah, make them a profit. Exactly. Thank you, Greg. So that is something I get, and I know that can at least from what we've been seeing, that kind of hamstrings the creative process a bit. So, but I think that's something that needs to be improved upon. But that's a topic for another day. But it's in that where you see these high margins in terms of production value, where they have the money, they have the talent to take those risks, but they don't. And yet you turn around and you look at the other end of the spectrum. You look at the indie studios and the AA, the AA studios, which really don't have that financial backing and leeway to take that risk. Like they don't. For a for indie studio, for AA studio, if what they're working on doesn't work, that can almost mean the end of that studio. in a
Yeah.
lot of
Well, the
cases.
thing is, for smaller people, they have to take a risk because that's how
Yeah.
they get noticed. Because that's the
Yeah.
biggest hurdle that they have to face.
Is
Just
visibility.
having people know they even exist. So they have
Mhm.
to do something different. They have to do something that's going to stand out. You know, big AAA studios, they don't have to worry about that because they got the money to advertise. You're going to know who they are, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, whether you're looking for it or not.
Exactly.
But it just it feels like it's counter where you have the where you at least in my mind it feels like the AAA studios that have the backing, have the budget, have the skill sets. And again, not saying the AAA and indie studios aren't skilled because they are. I mean, we've seen it, but the amount of skilled personnel that AAA studio has dwarfs the amount of skilled personnel an indie studio or a double A studio has. Like it just is. It's math. Simple. They just have more people that can do the job. You'd think they'd be the ones kind of pushing that boundary, pushing the innovation.
No,
Not to say that,
absolutely not.
but they're not
No,
for
and
various reasons.
well, but here's think about this for just a moment. Here's a reason why for this, okay? And part of it's just how we look at it, and not just we as the consumers, but how they're looking at themselves. Because a triple A game studio produces what? Triple A games, right?
Yeah.
It's the same concept as banks that are too big to fail. For a very long time, we believed that banks could be too big to fail. They just had so much money, so much equity, power, influence, that there's just no way they could fail. We proved that theory wrong about 10 years ago.
I think we
well,
proved
13.
it a couple times already.
Oh, well, and ever since then, we've been proving it over and over again. And I think, you know, potentially what we're seeing right now, different industry, but what we're seeing right now is the same cause and effect. Is, you know,
I think you're right.
Here's the thing. And the point behind the banks that were too big to fail is that since they were such big banks, it meant that they could only do big business, only do big things. So they bought large packages of subprime mortgages because they're a really big bank, so they need to spend billions of dollars, not $10 million. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem you see with these quote unquote AAA. I mean, where did we come up with this bullshit? AAA
I don't
games,
fucking know.
quadruple A games.
Oh.
Who cares? And you
Well,
make a good
there's
game or you
there's only
don't.
one of
AAA
those.
game. Only one of those.
Yeah, there's only one of those.
Well, I mean, the direction I want to point, and here's the thing. I know that this is a, you know, this is a no way. The answer to this is absolutely not. From the standpoint of the quote unquote AAA game studios, and that is, why can't you make anything but a AAA game?
I was just about to ask that question or make that comment. It's like, yeah, why don't you make a smaller
Why
game?
can't you make smaller games? Why can't you utilize the talent that you have to make really awesome indie style games, small scale, and then work
that
towards?
Sounds like $30-$40.
There you go.
Here's the thing: it doesn't have to be that small scale. Like, just like, you know, you spend like, you know, 300, 200, you know, sometimes even 500 million. That's too much. Like,
That's a lot of money.
like granted,
That's a lot of
Baldur's
money.
Gate 3 did have a huge budget. That game was 100 million, but they
delivered.
They delivered, and they
over-delivered.
did a risk as well. Like, that's a CRPG.
Yeah.
I've never heard of a CRPG that costs 100 million to make. Like, no one has really done that. Like, that's
Tell you
a little
what,
crazy if you think about it.
the indie games are ultimately more profitable than the AAA games are, and
for many reasons. Number one, the budget's lower, and you can. And I hate to use this term, but you can crank out more. Because that's another reason why the AAA industry is starting to, the AAA strata of the gaming industry starting to buckle, is because they not only are they only making one or two games, which we've already discussed, can be a boon and can kind of be the right way to go. But when you're hedging all your bets on these 1 or 2 games
Mm-hmm.
that not only cost a shit ton of money, but then they take at the earliest half a fucking decade, in some cases, a decade or more to make, and then they bomb. Well, that's just 10 years down the drain, hundreds of millions of dollars down the drain, and now you're sitting there with nothing.
Yeah, but the problem is that like anything that gets too big will eventually be crushed under its own weight.
That's
Like,
a good observation.
talking about the banks, that happened. Talk about fucking empires throughout the world, that happened. They got too big, got crushed under their own weight. And the same is going to be like for games with absolutely bonkers budgets. They get crushed underneath their own weight. There's I'm honestly so very interested to see how GTA 6 turns out. I am very interested in that because I don't know if that $2 billion budget is true. It's a little hard to confirm that, but that's what I've seen talked about. I think that's according to a leak, I think. So, grain of salt there. But,
Yeah.
It doesn't change the fact that that game undoubtedly has a massive budget because I think they're trying to like build Miami almost like 1-to-1, like
Ooh.
spatially, because
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's gonna be massive.
I mean, they
like,
did that with one of the recent Spider-Man games. I think it was the most recent one.
yeah,
I think they
Marvel
built
Spider-Man 2 cost $300 million. Like, and we
Yeah.
saw the problem there. Like, it was a good game. Like,
Uh,
no one is saying that that game was bad. It's a
I mean, it got
fantastic game. It
nomination.
did really well, but like,
Yeah.
it just had too big a budget. It didn't meet the expectations wanted, and like, especially when Sony kept it as a console exclusive, because they
Yeah.
pump a huge budget into this thing, but restrict where they're selling it. It's like,
That makes
yeah,
sense.
it's good for the consoles, but it's if you want the game to sell well, that's not how you do it. In Sony's case, that's like a conflict of interest happening right there.
Yeah.
Because they own both the console and the game, but like, what's good for one may not be good for the other. And we saw that.
Yeah.
Something Sony's starting to kind of like change their tune on, like both Sony and Microsoft actually, when it comes to console exclusives.
Yeah, they are slowly but
surely,
surely.
that, which is good.
Well,
That's honestly good.
I'm gonna say kind of, because I'm glad you brought up Sony. It's kind of a good segue into one of the other topics we're gonna discuss.
Yeah,
in this whole
Sony
piece.
bullshit.
You wanna lead us into that, Matt, since you brought him up? Because yeah,
Okay.
Sony is still on that fuck shit.
Sony is continuing on. It started with Helldivers, the mandatory linking of the PSN account, even when you're
Still listening.
if you're playing on Steam PC. And they rolled that back, but we talked about initially, like, for how long. I can see them reintroducing this. Well, I'd say by now it's only a matter of time because they're doing it on other games, notably single player games, which is the wackiest part. Ghost of Tsushima, for one, I haven't played it, but I know it's very well loved game. With the PC releases, they're mandatorying the linking of a PSN account to that, and now even with God of War Ragnarok on PC, demanding that has to link the account. So and of course the bad thing about that is that those games become restricted in areas that don't have PlayStation Network. So it's friend. You've watched a friend play, yeah. Like Ghost of Tsushima. It's one of those things I probably should check out a little more, but I've heard nothing but good things. Fantastic game. And Sony, they usually, with their console exclusives, will eventually release it on PC. That seems to be how they do it. Like maybe like wait a year around and then eventually port it over. but yeah, it seems like they're really going all in on this linking your PSN account and really committing to. They're committing to it essentially. Even if it means restricting the sale of these games to only certain regions. So I think it's coming back to Helldivers too. I'm 100% certain. Don't know how long they're gonna wait, but they're gonna reintroduce it.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, with Helldivers 2, the linking. So here's my take on the whole PlayStation piece of restricting restricting games to only areas on the globe that have access to creating a PlayStation Network account. I get it to a degree for games that are going to be online, like Helldivers 2 and some of the other games out there that are going to be online. Personally, I fucking hate always online games. That's just me.
Oh yeah, especially when it's not even like multiplayer,
Yeah, like if it's a single player game, why do I have to be online for the achievements? How about you just no, there's offline mode, goddamn it! Like, what do you? Okay, enough. No more ranting.
That's a different argument entirely, right there.
Fucking stupid. But anyway, for the always online games,
ranting's my job. You doing?
Yeah, that is true. Gotta live the ground. Else he has nothing to do.
We all have a lot of rants from time to time.
It just doesn't make sense. It makes sense for the always online games that they have out there, not just PlayStation, but any game. It makes a certain amount of sense for that to happen. For you having to have a PlayStation Network account or a Xbox Game Pass, whatever account. I get it. For various internal reasons, I'm sure, probably to get game data anonymously and other stuff.
Link them into the ecosystem.
Link them into the ecosystem. Maybe
which is why they're doing
achievements.
This.
Yeah.
They're trying to bring everyone that they possibly can into the PlayStation ecosystem.
But for games that are single player, like God of War Ragnarok, it makes absolutely zero sense because the game isn't. At least as far as I know, and I haven't played it. I should. I've been told it's phenomenal. I need to play it, but it's not always online, and it's a single player game. So why? Like first of all, you're making like I think Matt said a couple minutes ago. You're trying to make this console exclusive, so you're cutting out, tons of people from the PC. Side of things, and arguably, again, I don't know the numbers. If one of you guys want to Google this, I think PC game players probably make up about half, or a bit less than half, of all the guys that play video games out there, and that's pitting PC against all the other consoles. Like literally, PC makes up a significant majority. Sorry, a significant not majority, a significant amount of video game players. Like you can't argue against that. So to make all these console exclusive pieces, and then on top of that, not only are you going to limit it to just the console for however long, which is a year, like I think you said, Matt, but even 6 months, I think is stupid.
So here's some interesting info for you, real quick.
Okay,
so out of an estimated 3.1 billion players, the data that was collected from that pool. 3.1 billion players.
Significant pool.
Over 50% only play on their smartphones. Yay, indie games.
I stand fucking corrected. I stand corrected.
40
fucking mobile
industry is huge, honestly, because it captures. A lot of the people are people you wouldn't even consider
grandmas,
like gamers as we know them, as we would consider them.
48% play on their PCs, and only 8% play on dedicated consoles.
Well, there you motherfucking go. Well, there you motherfucking go.
I think we need to find some other day. Only 8% consoles.
Yeah,
There you fucking
there's some
go.
there's
Okay,
some,
we're gonna sprinkle the greatest salt
that's
on that one.
globally. That's globally. In the U.S., the video game the market for PC players is only 30%.
That's still a significant amount. It blows my mind that these companies like Sony and even Xbox to a degree continue. Well, we're gonna do console exclusive for next 6 months to a year. Completely cut. I mean, I know why. It's to force people to buy a fucking Xbox or a PlayStation. But why? And here's the thing: every PC player that exists is like, why the fuck would I buy? Yeah, it's $500, but I could spend that $500 on an upgrade for my PC, which makes that look like a piece of shit. Why would I spend the $500 on that when I can upgrade my PC for a fraction of the cost and still continue to play games at better resolution, better performance, better everything than I would on a freaking console? And here's the thing. Those companies are drastically underestimating the patience of PC players. We'll wait till your game goes on sale. We'll wait till your game comes to PC to play it.
Patient gamer always wins.
Yeah, we'll wait. We got other shit we could play. We'll wait.
Yeah, like the console exclusivity and even this with Sony demanding the linking of the PSN accounts. It's not about helping the game sell. They're doing actually the opposite by restricting what games can be sold by doing these things. It's all about the console and their ecosystem. That's what they're trying to boost by essentially, maybe this might be a bit of a harsh way to put it, by essentially harming the game.
I mean, they kind of are in a way, at least in my opinion. They really are harming their game. Because you're just limiting. I'm sorry, if I'm making a fucking game, I want as many people to play it as possible. You own a PC? Play. I want you to play my game. You own an Xbox? I want you to play my game. You own a PlayStation? Play my game. I want you to play my game and enjoy it. I don't see the point in limiting your game to just your like. It makes zero sense to me, both from a business standpoint. I mean, majority from a business standpoint, and just from a English words, from the standpoint of making your studio more known, showcasing your ability to make great games. It makes zero sense to me why they would do. Greg, I don't know. You need to weigh on this, man. I don't get it. Explain it to me like I'm fucking stupid. Maybe there's some business guru shit that I'm fucking missing here, because I don't get it. I'll get it.
I don't have.
It's like you're leaving money on the table. Even for conservative numbers from what you for what you stated on the numbers that you put forward, even conservatively on the conservative side of that, PC players make up a significant portion, a noticeable portion of all game players worldwide. We're not going to talk about mobile. Fuck that.
Well,
that's a whole other realm there.
Yeah, that's the Wild West, man.
Well, here's the thing. There was speculation for a long time that consoles would replace PC gaming. And that's, well, there's still potential for that to happen.
I don't think it's impossible.
I can see it purely, and again, I'm sure you're gonna probably correct me, but I can see it purely from a price point.
Well, that's one right there, absolutely.
Yeah,
but
it's price point.
Consoles are becoming more and more powerful and able to compete with PCs. Now, PCs still, I mean, the technology's still there if you can pay for it or you're willing to pay for it. Yeah. But your baseline, so your baseline PCs, so if you're going to go to Walmart and buy a PC, the console you could buy is probably going to be comparable to the PC you're going to buy.
And drastically cheaper.
Probably.
So that is a very good point.
But
I think that's what consoles offer: the better price point comparatively, and I guess sort of like the ease of use. Because like when you're buying a PC, you have to think about all these different parts. Like what kind of graphics
Motherboard,
card,
RAM,
motherboard,
graphics
all these
card,
things. It's so much easier to just buy an Xbox, buy a PlayStation. No, it's a lot easier.
If you can find a PlayStation.
Well, there's a couple other things that you have to factor in here. One that we haven't talked about yet is smart TVs and the technology there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
yeah.
I don't think that smart TVs are going to be the replacement piece, but I do.
Not that smart, in my opinion.
The virgin market that's here is virtual, and it's going to come. They're going. I mean, the technology keeps improving. You're going to. We'll see that. We'll see that eventually, where there is a virtual gaming machine.
Hook up to your TV.
Maybe hook up to your TV. Maybe it's the whole glasses, goggles thing.
Yeah.
Who knows what it's going to be.
Pull a Sword Art Online where you just put on a headset and you're virtually inserted into the game, and you feel like almost like Ready Player One.
Exactly, and that
with the ability for the headset to microwave your brain.
Maybe.
Yeah,
what doesn't microwave your brain anymore? I mean, but,
yeah. I know. I hope I'm still alive to see that, because that would be fucking dope. I wish. And I will say this: the first person to come up with that, they are going to make astronomical amounts of money.
So would you want to be one of the people that get trapped in the game, the fucking death microwave on your head?
Depends on how into the game you are.
That's something. Okay, it's like
I mean, come on.
In the death game.
I mean, come on.
For
well,
years,
assuming
you live and you eventually get back, like, that's like years later, your body is atrophied.
The question I'm asking myself, the question I have to ask myself is, do I think I'm that good to live? And I don't know. I can't answer that question. So part of me wants to be like, yeah, no problem. Part of me wants to be like, I don't know. But to answer your question, no, I would. But I hope that in our lifetime that we get to enjoy that Ready Player One and that whole virtual reality piece, that becomes a reality. I think that would be absolutely insanely cool and very innovative.
Now think about the context of what we're talking about, though, when it comes to the exclusivity piece to it.
I can see why they would want to be exclusive in that case. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's, it's because that is going to be, at least initially, it's going to be a limited technology, just like the when the Sony PlayStation first came out. Okay.
Oh yeah, I remember that day.
They launched. You had Sega that was out there as well that launched right in that same area. I do believe Sega actually launched first, but they didn't.
I think so.
They didn't get a good launch. Sony kind of dominated the market right off the bat, and that gives you a pretty clear picture of the technology piece right there. And they had similar technologies. Sony's was just better. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, and I see the point you're making, but consoles aren't better than PCs. I mean, baseline comparable, but not better.
Oh, I agree completely. I mean, I've got both.
That argument, I get it, and I agree with you, but that argument holds more weight if the PlayStation and Xbox were better than a comparable PC, but they're not. They're almost identical. But you can do more with a PC.
You're thinking about this way too linearly. Okay, when you think
I know, I'm aware.
8% of 3.1 billion people is still roughly 250 million consumers. And if you're selling, even a tenth of that is $30,
$60-$70 games.
I'm talking about the machines themselves. I mean, you're still selling 30 million of these machines at a couple $100 a crack.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's fair. That's fair.
That's a big business.
Okay. Yeah, see, that's why I asked you, because I knew there was something I was missing, because it did not click for me. But I mean, I still think, even with that information, I still think that it just, it feels like there's money left on the table for them. That's why it doesn't make sense to me. Because yes, they might not be buying a PlayStation or an Xbox, but again, you still have people coming to buy your game. $60.
Well,
10 million people come buy your game. 10 million units. That's $60. Plus whatever tax or whatever. That's money still in your pocket. So again, I don't know. It doesn't
See,
add up.
that's the argument that I make on the software piece to it, because I mean, you get to a certain point where does the cost of the software really matter? Because the fact of it is you put all that development cost into that software, unless it's an online environment where you have to continually support it. But then that's a different dynamic, and we kind of talked about this before, how that works. But when it comes to a single person game in particular, all the development cost goes into that up front. You have very little after release, and
Exactly.
at a certain point, it's just done. And then it's all profit. Well, maybe not all profit, but I mean, you're not, your overhead is drastically reduced, and now you've got a big bunch of money coming in. It's very similar to how industry used to very prevalently work, where essentially during your and this is how industry worked across the board. During the summer months, you pound out inventory, you build up your inventory, and then you sell it down. You lay all your people off during your winter months, your slower time, and then you sell off that inventory, and that's how you make your money. It's how we came to the whole concept of Black Friday and all that jazz. Is because that's how it would work. During the beginning of the year, you spend while you inventory build, and then once you get your inventory to where you want it to be, then you cut back your workforce and you sell down the inventory. And by the end of the year, you are everything you're selling is profit because all your costs has been covered. And that's it still works that way in some industries, and I in this industry, when it comes to any type of entertainment, look at movies for one. $300, $400, $500 million on making a movie, but once that movie's released, you're not dumping piles of money into it anymore. Now you're just sitting back and collecting. I'm not saying there's no expense. There probably is still some expense there. But it just comes down to the fact that you're going to collect over the lifetime of that product. And the lifetime of that product is not like this bottle of Sprite here, all right? Because this has a very short life cycle to it. And it's not even looking at expiration dates. It's just simply as soon as I open it, it's dying until it's gone. Then it's done. Yeah, Coke doesn't make any more money off of it. It's only sold one time, okay? Now, a digital product works in a different way because you're going to buy it once, but then you are going to that particular product, you only have to make it once.
Yep. Too. And it just continues to sell and sell
exactly.
and sell.
It's one of the big reasons everything's going to digital now instead of hard form. You can barely find actual hard form discs or anything like that.
And most laptops and most like desktops in general, most PCs don't even come with a disk drive anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm coming to drive anymore. Because again, everything's digital or download or what have you. So yeah, I mean, in that case, I even though I don't like digital and I don't like the reason this is a tangent, but the reason why I personally hate digital is because of the way it's being handled on the business side. Meaning, and we've talked about this before, but they can come in and literally, and it was actually Sony, pull stuff out of your library and be like, well, yeah, you can't play that anymore. But I paid for that. Like, I gave you money for that thing. You're taking it back. Where the fuck's my money?
Yeah, like, we've talked about this several times when it comes to digital ownership, which, as a concept, like, it does offer a lot of conveniences, and I do think
I think for everyone,
it is a good thing to exist,
ideally,
as long as it's handled right and not, companies taking shit out of your library that you paid for. That's the dark side of digital ownership right there.
And the thing is, it's like you're not getting your money back for an item that you no longer have that you paid for and that's ideally what you should be getting back. But as compensation, at least give me credit so I can then go spend that credit on something else within your ecosystem.
Yeah.
So,
But-
well, yeah,
but,
you know what I mean.
yeah,
But anyway, that's here nor there. We can probably talk about
yeah,
that.
that's
another episode.
stuff we've talked about before at length.
Yeah.
But speaking of Sony-related things, I think that's kind of the last thing on our docket tonight.
And it's a ray of sunshine in the gloom. A huge ray of sunshine, actually.
Yeah,
But
at least I hope it is. So we talked about Arrowhead Game Studios before, Helldivers, and all the stuff that's gone on with them. Well, recently their CEO Johan Pilestead, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, am I?
Yes, I believe. Yeah, Johan Pilestead. I believe that's proper pronunciation. Johan, if you're hearing this at any point in time, I apologize if it's not.
So he decided to actually step down as CEO of Arrowhead Games, and so that because what he wants to do, and actually before I get into what he wants to do, he did find someone else to replace him. It was, let's see,
What was it? Was it that guy from? Was it that guy who was at EA?
No, God, no. It is so the guy that they got to replace Johan Pilstead as CEO of Arrowhead Game Studio is a gentleman by the name of Shams Georgiani. If I'm pronouncing that name, Shams, if you're hearing this in the future, I apologize. But he actually worked with Arrowhead Game Studios way back when they put out a game called Magica. I don't know if that's the full name of the game, but that's how kind of how I remember it. It was like this little kind of ever played Gauntlet? Anybody here ever played Gauntlet back in the day?
Well, I played
I know you remember.
Red Wizard needs food badly.
Yeah, you played it. So you played Gauntlet Legacy.
Yeah,
so
I played Dark Legacy. Good game.
Yeah, it's kind of in the realm of that game of like Gauntlet, where it's like a hack and slash, but you play as wizards, and there's like 4 different color wizards. I think it's red, green, yellow, and blue. And they made that. So he was with Arrowhead Game Studios when they put that out, and then he went over.
Damn elf.
I want to say to Paradox Studios, if that's a studio name.
I don't remember where he was, but essentially this is like someone that the folks at Arrowhead, they know him. He has history with the studio, and essentially
it was Paradox. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And he is the one that's taking up the reins of CEO now, while Johan is dedicating himself to focus on the creative side, because that's what he wants to do. And I don't know how much of like the recent debacle with Sony and the mandatory linking of the PSN accounts. I don't know how much like that debacle has to play in this decision. That's hard to say, but if Johan wants to focus on the creative side, and because that's where his passion lies, that's where he thinks he can do the best for the company and the games and for, I guess, himself, then by all means. The fact that they've got another guy that they, the fact that they know him, it feels like at least hopefully that this is someone that can be trusted at the reins of the company, rather than like random Joe Schmo that came along,
Yeah, and I think that's a good example of a CEO. And this doesn't even have to just be a CEO. It could be anybody at a company or any individual, any endeavor. Hey, look, I know I'm in this position, but this ain't for me. I'm really better over here. I would rather go over there and do better work. I think that says a lot about him as an individual and as a creator, and to a degree as a CEO, because so the job, at least in my opinion, the job of CEO has many facets, but one of them is hiring the right people and putting the right people in the right positions to make your company prosper. And he took a step back and looked at the company as a whole. And again, I'm not trying to speak for Johan, but this is kind of what it feels like he did, and said, you know what, I'm better over here. and he found someone to take his place. And honestly, and the reason why I say that's like a ray of sunshine, because a ray of hope, is because not only for Helldivers 2 as a game, because again he's passionate about creating good games. That only means that the game is going to get better, and the game's already fucking great. So kudos to him for that. But it's also an example, and it kind of actually reminds me of Sven Vink a bit, because he's also another CEO who is very passionate about the creative process, and he's a game developer himself. He's a creative himself, so he respects that process. And in his position at Larian, we all know he fosters that creative process in his people. But going back to Helldivers, it speaks a lot to Johan that he stepped back and stepped down, to one, kind of lean into what he's passionate about, but also found someone who worked with the team before and is passionate about what they do. Kind of know, obviously, I think Giorgiani left like 10 years ago, so it's been a bit of time, but he's not like an unknown quantity, and he's stepping into that position. And from what I've done research, Giorgiani has a really solid track record at Paradox of from the business angle of innovation and pushing that forward, and making Paradox a profitable company. So that's a step in the right direction. And I think Johan, really, his example could be taken and utilized by anybody at that level. Now I think most CEOs are not creatives, at least from what we've been seeing lately. At least what we've been seeing from the AAA studios, most of those guys are probably not creatives. Maybe they've become, in a way, creatives just working at a game studio and being around those people. But I think most of those individuals are more business focused. And I feel like in any creative industry, especially in the video game industry, I feel like as a CEO, you have to have a decent balance of the two. It doesn't have to be, in my opinion, it doesn't have to be a 50-50, but I think you have a decent balance of having a solid business mind and business acumen, but also having an understanding of the creative process of your business and the project that they're working on. Because then you can straddle that line and see both sides and be like, okay, I know what these guys needed, but I also know what we need here. How can we bridge that gap and make sure that we're firing on all cylinders and getting as much output as we can from both sides in a productive manner for everyone. Now I know that's the utopia, the sunshine and rainbows, the ideal. It's never going to be that clean, but I think that we should strive for that. I'm gonna shut up and let these guys talk because I felt like I rambled for fucking ever.
No, I'm right there with you. Because Sven Vink is one of the few leaders in the game industry that I really respect. Because as I said, he's a man he is a CEO, so obviously he works in a lot of the business stuff, and he has to he pays attention to that and has to make sure that Larian realistically is able to still function. But from everything he said, the way he's run his company, it's clear that he deeply cares about the creative process and knows that if he lets his people make the best damn game possible, the money will come. People will buy that game. They at Larian, they make a point that on the FAQ that there are no microtransactions. They don't care about all that bullshit that you see in the AAA gaming sphere. The microtransactions, the system of developing flaws into a game to sell them the solution. He doesn't care about that shit.
Looking at you,
you make a damn good game, people are going to buy it. And what do you know? So far, it's fucking worked for him. Each, Divinity Original Sin 1, Divinity Original Sin 2, and now Baldur's Gate. I don't know what they did before, but it's been clear that they've been like a fucking rising star, and they've been doing that by just putting out damn good quality games.
You know what? I'm gonna look up that. That's good.
Because it honestly in this, like, in the past several years, it's been growing where you feel like a lot of those big games that come out don't respect you. They don't respect your time. They don't respect your wallet. They're nickel and diming you. So it feels so refreshing to see something come out where they're not nickel and diming you, where it feels like you, the player, are actually being respected by the game you're playing.
I believe
I think that's one of the reasons why another one of the reasons why those like smaller studios and like the AA's and the indies are doing so well, because again, they more than the AAA games, than your Ubisofts or Activision Blizzards, feel like they actually respect you.
All right, so I actually pulled up their catalog of games. So they have created Divinity Fallen Heroes, the LED Wars back in March of 1998, Divine Divinity in 2002, Beyond Divinity in 2004, Ketnek Kick, which is in 2004. I think that's a specific game. It was created for Belgian TV channel for kids, so I think that's very more kind of dialed in. Then they did Divinity 2, Ego Draconis, Divinity 2, the Dragon Knight Saga, Divinity Dragon Commander, and then came in 2014 Divinity Original Sin, Divinity Original Sin 2 in 2017, and then Baldur's Gate 3. So they had a solid list of games behind them. Most of them I've never heard of. Well, actually, no. I have heard of the Divinity games. Never played them, but I've heard of them.
That's a lot more Divinity than I was expecting.
There's a lot of Divinity.
They really like that.
Yep.
That's not all like technically the same world, is it?
I
guess we already tell without looking into it.
I kind of like Divinity, especially at the holidays. Around the holidays, I really like Divinity.
I mean, we could maybe we could say Larian is blessed. You know what I mean? They're blessed. It's a terrible joke, but I couldn't let it go. They're blessed. But yeah, they've. And again, this is kind of circling back to what we were saying earlier about working on the one title or two titles. I think Larian Studios is a good example of that, where you can do that successfully. But I feel like it has to be done a certain way. Not saying that you have to take the Larian formula in that follow what they did step by step, but the heart of what they did, which was, as Matt was saying, they created a good game, just a blanket good game. They listened to their players, because I remember them doing a lot of community work even back with Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. They were still very open and very communicative with their community, and then even more so with Baldur's Gate 3. But that's what I mean, where you can take that example of Larian Studios and replicate that. And same thing with Arrowhead Game Studio, not to get off of them, but take them, because I think they've to a degree and in their own way have taken kind of a page out of Larian's book, where they're super communicative with their community. They're community focused, meaning that their game is made for the people who are going to play the game, and they're always seeking feedback and making improvements on the game. They're not worried about the money. Hence why they made a shit ton of money.
Hence why, they do have a cash shop, but
I wouldn't say that
only
they're
cosmetics.
I would never say that they're not worried about the money. That's
okay.
Honestly just not true. But
I think anyone has to be worried about the money, but it's about how far do you go to chase that money, and what are you willing to sacrifice in order to do that? We've seen plenty of examples of companies willing to burn their public goodwill in order to chase that money more and more. games like
Not put it better than I
willing
did.
to sacrifice, the game design in order to sell more. They'll sell these solutions that they for flaws they baked into the game. Folks at Arrowhead, they do have a cash shop. They are, they do monetize their game, but from lots of people that I've heard talk about it, their cash shop doesn't feel as predatory. They don't feel as pressured to buy things. They don't feel like they're overpriced, and because of that, they're actually a little more willing to pay for that. I mean, it's stuff we've spoken about their cash shop several times.
Yeah.
The way that they've done it and the way that it's not egregious, and because of that, it's actually quite successful.
And also, go ahead.
Well, there's some philosophical pieces here when it comes to the business piece of it, and what we've approached this as is providing value, and that's our approach to this is to be a value provider, and through providing value, we'll be able to grow our community, take care of our customers, provide them with what they want. Okay. Now there's a totally different philosophy that's out there. That's probably an even older philosophy, and that's build a better mousetrap. And unfortunately, that is it's really more of a means of using what you've developed to continually increase your profits. The problem with it is, and here's the thing: learn from others. Absolutely a good thing. Learn from what they do, but also understand the laws of diminishing returns. Because when everybody is doing the exact same thing, the whole game changes. All right? Nobody's going to make as much, or may not make anything at all. And that's just simply because it's not new, it's not fresh, and it's not going to work the same way. I mean, that's just how it works. When you innovate on something and you create something new, whether it's a new process, a new product, a new idea, and you put it out there into the world as a brand new, fresh thing, or an upgrade to this thing, understand that if it does well, people are going to copy you. I'm just saying that's not a bad thing, that to learn from other people's innovation. But understand that you can't just you can't expect to be perpetually successful just by taking other people's ideas and reselling those ideas. And it's the law of diminishing returns says very simply that over time it's going to become worth less, and eventually worth nothing.
Yeah.
And that's the key piece to it. Learn from others, absolutely, but don't just do the cookie cutter thing, because eventually people are going to get sick of your cookies.
And honestly, that's what's happening in the AAA space. People are, gamers are getting tired of just seeing the same shit over and over again. We're getting tired of it. It's getting old. We're seeing the same stuff we saw years ago.
The unfortunate part about it is most of these AAA studios are they seem to operate under the mousetrap idea. Build a better mousetrap. How do we suck more people in and then suck all the money out of them that we can? Where you have and it tends to be the smaller studios, and I'm not going to say the smaller studios and even the indie studios are not heroes by any means. Some of them are, but some of them are operating under that same build a better mousetrap philosophy, because they're going to continually crank out mediocre games and suck up as much money as they can out of people, because that's what their business model is. And good, bad, I mean, whatever. If you're only paying $15 for it, I mean, do you and you put it 200 hours into playing it, do you really have a right to complain at that point?
Exactly.
I'm sure you do, but
at that point you can't. Yeah, exactly. You got your money's worth. You can complain if you want, but you can't sit there and be like, you didn't get your money's worth if you pay $15 or $20, hell,
right.
even $30, but you spend 200 hours on the thing. Like, at that point, your argument kind of loses water there, buddy. But yeah, I agree. It's producing that value for the customer. We've talked about this many times before, and kind of how we approach our process. But to kind of give you a quote, because I'll actually drop this link in there as well, if you guys want to read it. Johan, hold on. There we go. He actually sat down with, let's see, it was GameIndustry.biz for an interview, and one of the quotes, pretty famously, was, we don't run the business for monetary gain. The humbleness and the desire to just make great games is the only reason we exist. That was him saying that to the interviewer. Now, does he believe that? I'm sure he does. Does he mean that? I'm sure he does. And is that like, how do I put this and not sound like an asshole? Is that like something that he should say? Yeah, definitely. But again, I'm not saying he doesn't believe that. He doesn't espouse that, because it's clear he does. But I think that right there is something that should be more prevalent in the industry.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And we tend to draw this line, and there is, most of the time, people who are, I'm going to say, more on the creative side. I mean, the creatives, that's what they want to do. The art people.
Yeah.
They get so tied up in their art that, managing a business is just a distraction. They don't want anything to do with that. They don't want to care about all that. They just want to make their thing. I want to make my thing. Leave me alone. Get the fuck out of my way. Let me make my thing.
Yeah, which is exactly why he stepped away as CEO. And honestly, I feel like, because, and we talked about this last night, privately, one cannot exist without the other. You can't have a creative endeavor that you want to turn into a business succeed with that business acumen. Same thing.
Someone needs to be the businessman.
Yeah, someone needs to.
Why do we have Greg? He's the businessman here.
Yeah, man, that's not the only reason why we have Greg. Greg has a very creative mind and really solid
wow,
creative chops. But yeah, he is the business guy. Of the three of us, Greg is a business guy. He keeps us on task with that kind of stuff, and we all contribute to the creative process. With Matt at the head of that. I just do the hosting of the. That's all I do.
Not much, just our weekly podcast.
Yeah, it's our weekly podcast. Not a big deal.
Neither one of us host podcasts, so it was either add like 4 lines at the top of your little image there on the screen, or just put it as, okay, he's the host of the Update Lab.
Yeah.
I should add a little plus sign on the end of that. Then it makes sense for you, right? Feel better?
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, so again, it's to me, I think to us as well, to a lot of people, to the Helldivers, to community, to Arrowhead Game Studio, the fact that he did, Johan had the wherewithal and this, the humility. I feel like humility to kind of step back. There's somebody better able to run this business than I am as a CEO. I'm going to step back and I'm going to switch focus to what I'm good at. I think that's a page that the entire industry and multiple industries can take a page out of that book and really utilize that to the benefit of themselves and the industry that they're in and their consumers. Because that, somebody with that kind of awareness and humility is only going to do great things when he or she steps into the position that best suits them.
All I can say is, if we were all just creatives, and that was our entire ambition, and the whole thing was just, we want to create really great things and we don't care about the money and all those things, if that is really the truth, then you better have a day job and be running a not-for-profit, because you're not going to have a profitable business.
Yeah. Yep. Pretty much. Because again, you can't have one without the other. If you're going to make a business out of it, you got to have someone who has business chops. But if you're gonna make a product, any product, doesn't have to be a video, but any product, you have to have someone who can envision that product and bring it to life. You can't have one without the other. And hopefully this and other instances like this, like Larian Studios and Swim Inc. are kind of rubbing off on people. Hopefully it gets to the fucking top. Hopefully it gets to the AAA level, but
They're too big to
I
fail.
don't. I honestly I don't foresee that happening. They're gonna buckle. They're gonna. I mean, we're already seeing it. They're gonna buckle within the next couple of years. We're already seeing it. The layoffs. It's gonna happen, and I think it needs to happen. I really do, because they need a reset, man. They need to really kind of get down to brass tacks and get back to the basics and really figure this shit out. Because they have the budgets, they have the personnel, they have the names attached to them to really put out some really fucking solid shit. And honestly, Greg, I think you came up with a really good alternative to what we're seeing, where you just make kind of smaller projects. Have your big mainstay project that you're working on that you want to put out there, but you have 200-300 people. Break that team down a little bit. Take 50 people and put them on this small project that you can crank out in 3 years and put that out there.
That's the blind piece that's going on with this is, with some of these smaller studios that have worked, they put good work on some big projects. Like some of the smaller studios that came along with Bethesda, some of the smaller studios that came along with Blizzard. There a complete lack of foresight in what could be done with those smaller studios. Why not use your main logo, Blizzard, all right, Activision Blizzard or whatever. Use that for your AAA base, and then you picked up all these smaller studios along with these purchases. Why don't you take those smaller studios and point them in the direction of making smaller projects?
Yeah.
And instead of just
they could be testing
liquidating
grounds.
them out and saying, we don't want to do this.
They can be testing
like
grounds.
Hi-Fi Rush, they say, is they closed down the studio that made Hi-Fi Rush as they were pitching the sequel.
They were. I think we mentioned that when we were talking about that, but they were in the process, like the studio. Basically, and it's ironic because I think all the studios they closed down, and there was I think there were 3, but the Tango Studios and the other one of the other studios, I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but they were in the process. What was it? Which one?
Arcane Austin. They were the
Arcane Austin. They were literally, as Matt said, they were literally in the middle of pitching sequels or new projects to Activision Blizzard to start, get rolling on production. And you're entirely right, Greg. I 100% agree with you. It's like have the as you said, the face, the bigger studio work on your flagship, but you have these other studios that you can utilize to make these smaller, more insulated games. They can be, they don't have to be major projects. They can be either a sequel or a one-off. But those are the studios where you can try those wacky ideas and see if they fucking work.
I mean, it'd be like it'd be kind of like testing grounds, because like Hi-Fi Rush. That's an experimental idea right there, like a rhythm-based action game like that.
Yeah,
that's a very unique idea, and
that has its own artistic flair.
Yeah, and because that's so unusual, that's probably why it got 0 advertising. They're like, this is a risk. We don't think it's going to work, so we're not going to advertise it.
Right.
Well,
lo and behold,
Bethesda was wrong. It did fucking pay out, and that's like, oh, well, hold on, this works.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing: it's not going to work every time. It's gonna, you're gonna have some flops. You're gonna have some games that it wasn't it. And I think that takes over in the business side, where if you're smart, you account for that. You're like, hey, we're not always gonna make the next latest and greatest, but there's always a lesson somewhere along that way. And again, I know we're kind of. Number one, we're speaking from experience because we're in that process now. But number two, I think with the current state of the industry as a whole, definitely at the upper, the quote put air quotes here, echelon here, because I honestly don't view AAA studios in the same light as I used to. Honestly, I think they're behind the curve. I think they're playing it safe way too hard. Playing it safe way too hard. They're not going to step out of that box until they buckle and break, and then they have no choice.
Yeah,
But at that point,
I have no doubt that some of the big name studios that we see right now, if they don't outright go away in the near future, they'll be a different entity than they are today.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I think we're
they're a different entity than they even were at the start.
Mm-hmm.
Like Blizzard, that's not the same company it was at the start. You know, its size, what it does, or the people there. Now that's it's a completely different company than what it started as.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's gonna evolve again one day, or I shouldn't say one day, but gradually. But but it may be a smaller form. We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see what happens with a lot of these studios. And again, I'm not sitting here trying to say I wish them to fail. It just honestly, we're just seeing an inevitability at this point.
Well, they gotta stop worrying about making the next great big thing. That's my take on it. They gotta just that's not working right now, and especially in the economy that we are in, that is not where you want to be. Stop worrying about making the next big thing. Stop worrying about winning the Game of the Year award or whatever the hell it is that's motivating you to do this stuff. Stop and start focusing on just making really great product. Fill a hole for your consumers, for the people who enjoy what you do. Make something that they want to play, and do so in a way that you don't have to, just completely take advantage of. I mean, I got other choice words in my head. I gotta pause for a moment before I say those things. But just take a minute and just stop fleecing your community, and just create create something really good for them. Give them something that they can enjoy and you can be proud of, that you actually created something that they really like, and you didn't have to pour millions and billions or whatever into it, and you don't have to go back to them and create all these microtransactions and all this other crap. Now, understandably, part of the reason why that happens is because of the capital piece to it and the investors piece to it. I get that. Something's got to give in it, though. It's really, something's going to have to give. The smaller studios are going to continue to grow. That's my take on this. Your indie studios like Larian. I mean, Larian's fairly big at this point. I mean, Baldur's Gate 3 has generated over $500 million in revenue. Now, that's not all going to Larian, obviously.
Yeah, because they signed that contract with
right. I mean, that's Well, and I mean, there's so many middlemen in between there. I mean, you've got all kinds of, royalty fees for this and that, and Steam and this, and there's a lot of
all that stuff.
Right. They didn't make $500 million. Let's put it that way. But I'm sure they made a nice tidy profit off of that.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah.
But that is it for episode 55. 55 episodes, Jesus.
It'll be 74 total, I do believe, with everything else that we've done with the update log over the past year. So that's more than one a week, man. That's good. That's a lot.
Not bad.
A lot of stuff.
Not bad at all. But yeah, that's it for episode 55, guys. Thank you for joining us tonight. For this topic, it's again, we did kind of poke at some of the issues within the industry as we typically do, but it's not all doom and gloom. Things are improving in certain areas, and as consumers, keep speaking up, keep making your voices heard, and kind of, letting studios know what you want to see and what you don't want to see. We've seen numerous instances over the last year, especially, where that's meant something. So keep doing it. But be respectful. Don't be sitting. Don't be kind of talking out your asses. Like, be respectful. These are people on the other end of that too. So, um,
Show a little love.
yeah. But that's it for episode 55. A little bit of housekeeping. We are still doing that community-focused outreach where, we want you guys, if you're interested, reach out to me. If you're interested on kind of coming on as a potential guest, obviously there's a process for that. So if you reach out to me if you're interested, we can get that process started for you. Again, keep your ear to the ground, as we do have guest speakers and guests from the industry coming up on our studio. When those processes are finalized, you guys will be kept up to date via our Discord and our other social medias. But please join our Discord, as that is the best way to keep kind of up to date immediately on everything, and to talk to us directly if you want to ask a question, talk about a topic that we've talked about, or even suggest a topic that you yourself are interested in us talking about. Drop it in our Discord, in the lounge chat for the update log, and let us know what you guys want to see, because we kind of put this out there for you guys to, and we want to inform you and put out the content you guys want to consume. So let us know. But Greg, what do we have for tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow night we are, and actually, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, but tomorrow night we are going to be doing book 3 of the Wheel of Time, which is that's actually the one that I started that series on, The Dragon Reborn. So we're going to do a little bit of a just chat, really. I hate to call it a review because it's kind of a review, but it's really just we're chatting about the story. Feel free, come join us, check it out, add your thoughts. If you've never been introduced to the Wheel of Time, this series by Robert Jordan, and there's also a Amazon has the Wheel of Time series now. Book 3, The Dragon Reborn, it will basically be the next season that's coming. So if you kind of want a little bit of a heads up as to what might be in that season, join us tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. and we'll chat through and give you our, all the facts, really our opinions, about the whole thing. So, yeah, look forward to seeing everybody there. It'll be exciting. Really quickly, we are also going to be introducing a new series for our game streams. So we're going to change things up a little bit, and it's not firm yet, but it's looking like it's probably going to be maybe Symborum, maybe Dragon's Mane, maybe it'll definitely be fantasy, and it'll definitely be something from Free League.
Yep. And if you haven't checked them out yet, I know we've talked about them quite a few times on the channel. Check them out. They have a absolutely fantastic catalog of games, both sci-fi and fantasy. They have a couple of different titles out there that you know and love, like Lord of the Rings, The Walking Dead, Blade Runner, plus their own personal titles like Vaesen, which is similar and in some ways better than Call of Cthulhu. I might get some hate for that one. But they have Coriolis, which
I'm the sci-fi guy that is like trapped in the room with all the fantasy folks. It's like,
hey, I
got on the wrong elevator or something. I don't know what the hell happened.
I'm not only fantasy, man. I love fantasy, but I love sci-fi too. I read Neuromancer. I've read William Gibson stuff. Trust me, I'm right there with you. I love both. I consume both. Matt is the purely fantasy guy. I'm kidding, Matt. Matt likes cyberpunk as well.
I like cyberpunk, but I will admit I'm more of a fantasy guy than I am sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean, look at the shirt he's wearing. Come on.
Final
Yeah,
Fantasy even.
this is Zelda.
Zelda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
that's good,
Legend of Zelda, Final
Legend
Fantasy.
Zelda.
Wow.
Final Fantasy is very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Hey,
yeah,
I have
that's
an
it, that's what we
excuse.
got,
I'm
guys.
old.
See, Matt, have you noticed he only falls back on that when it suits him?
So it's
If it
okay when
works,
he
man.
says he's old, but if I say he's old, I'm speaking out of pocket.
That's wrong.
Exactly. I completely agree with you on that one. But anyway, guys, that is it for episode 55. Greg, are we doing a raid tonight?
No, I think we're just going to close out tonight, and you go check somebody else out. One of the other channels that we usually work with. I see a couple of them are on right now. So like Stormy D is on, a couple others. Go check them out, or just go find something new that you want to check out tonight. Just take a look around,
explore.
find something good. If it's not good, then keep looking, I guess.
Yeah,